What's up and welcome back? I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today, we're talking about the 55th anniversary. Yeah, I'm going for it. 55th anniversary. I know it's a weird year. It's like, shouldn't you have done this? Listen, listen. It has audio description of Midnight Cowboy, which was released in 1969. So, it's a Best Picture winner. Actually, my first time seeing it, notable for being X-rated. Um, and we're going to talk about it. It's on MGM Plus with audio description. Look at that. So I found it and I was like, oh, I got to do this because it's a Best Picture winner that I've never seen. So, of course, and it's having an anniversary. Like, what would I'm doing anniversary releases. So, of course, I'm going to do Midnight Cowboy. So first time through, yeah, blind. And so I was fully reliant upon the audio description and it was human, which is great. Even better. We hired actual people to do this. I was so excited. It just, honestly, I thought, anyway, we'll get to that. I need to introduce myself for my blind subscribers. It's a black baseball cap. It's on backwards. I have black sunglasses and I'm wearing, I believe, a Mario Kart shirt. I've never really realized. So I think it's a Mario Kart shirt. The perfect shirt for a Midnight Cowboy review. I plan these things obviously to match the shirt to the to the movie. Nothing says Midnight Cowboy like Mario Kart. So this is an Academy Award nominee for Best Picture. It's a winner for Best Director for John Schlesinger, and it's a winner for Best Adapted Screenplay. It also got nominations for both of its lead actors, Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman, in lead. We used to do things like this. Could you imagine if it was like nowadays? They'd both be like supporting. They'd be like Judas and the Black Messiah, like, I don't know, or we'd split them up to where it's somebody feels like they have to be supporting because, like the She Said thing where they put Carey Mulligan in supporting for some reason and it didn't work out for her, but they ran a supporting campaign. Look, there's two leads in lead. That's amazing. When arguably Dustin Hoffman does actually have less screen time. Here you could actually make the case. Here you've got more of like a Banshees of Inisherin thing where it's like, I guess technically Brendan Gleeson does have less screen time than Colin Farrell. And it's not 100%. It's pretty noticeable that Jon Voight has more screen time, but yeah, they both won. Both of them lost too. Neither one of them won. And it also got a supporting actress nomination. I'm not really sure why. Coming out of this film, there's nothing, I didn't get a takeaway from any of the supporting characters really other than the two leads. Bob Balaban's in this for like 2 seconds. Noticed that when I looked it up on IMDb. What else to talk about with this? I don't know. It's an iconic film. I feel like this is a film that we are moving away from. I feel like our progressiveness as a culture is moving away from a progressive film. See, for 1969, this was subversive as fuck. For 1969, that's why I got an X rating. You know what I'm saying? Like, this was, oh my God, can we show this in theaters? And nowadays, we go back and we look at it and we go, well, it's really homophobic. It stars two problematic lead males. Dustin Hoffman's been called out, and then in the Me Too movement I will table that. I will table my opinions on his specific Me Too calling out. And Jon Voight is, I don't know, down the MAGA route. So I feel like the reason why I don't think it's on the IMDb Top 250 anymore. I think it seriously has fallen off the IMDb Top 250. I think it had like a 7.4 on IMDb, and I'm like, this was on the AFI Top 100 list of all time back when they first started doing lists. how has this fallen from grace? And the only reason this has fallen from grace is because young people woke up and they were like, hey, no, we don't like this. This is not the people in this and what it represents and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but like for 1969, like you know, I I don't always get a chance. I remember when when I was talking to somebody, I was like, I feel like I have to advocate so much for audio description that I'm always a blind film critic, but I never get to be a gay blind film critic because it never comes out. I can't really advocate for the other half of me. There are enough other people doing that, very little people doing advocating for audio description out there. So yes, a lot of it, some of it made me uncomfortable. They used the word faggot a lot in the movie. But then I was like, in 1969, pretty certain Ratso dies of AIDS. Um, it's not really like said, but he's sick of something. It would be a little early, I think, for that, but not too terribly early. It's early for them to think about it and quantify it into cinema, is what I would say. That's what feels early. But if they did do that, then it's subversive. So, um, it adds to the subversive nature of the film. The film stars Jon Voight as Joe Buck, who is a dumbass cowboy from Texas. I'm sorry, he is. It's a great way to just cut to the chase on that one. Um, who I guess for 1969 was pretty to look at. I've never really thought that while looking at Jon Voight, even before I knew anything about him, like politically or whatever. I've never looked at Jon Voight and been like, he looks attractive to me. Even like old clips of him, at no point in his lifetime have I ever been like, wow, Jon Voight. But he has to sell it as Joe Buck, this guy who wants to be a hustler and believes that going to New York is his calling and that he will be able to be the ultimate hustler. It's sort of like somebody who watched, like, I don't know, American Gigolo and was like, oh, I could do that. So that's all I need to do. Got it. Done. I think you missed the point of the movie. I think you. So, he uses his misguided hubris to travel to New York on a bus and has a little bit of a hard time. He's poor anyway. It's not like he goes there with like tons of money and gets fully set up and becomes like a high end escort. No, he's basically just like walking the streets and wink, wink, nudge, nudge, trying to get people, um, in in this time period. And the first time he gets anybody hooked, it's with somebody who ends up not having any money and then asking for him for money uh, for a taxi. So he ends up actually losing money on his first transaction. Again, he's a dumbass. Um, he goes and walks around some more, and eventually he goes to this bar where he meets uh Dustin Hoffman's character prefers to be called Rico. He has a much longer name. I can't even remember what it was, but everybody calls him Ratso. It's a derogatory term for him. He has a limp, and I don't know. He feels uncomfortable when you meet him, like the kind of guy that you're like, this guy is shady. But Joe Buck is dumb as shit and trusts and trusts him and is like, yeah, you seem like you're good people. There's a incredibly problematic, and the audio description uses the term effeminate. Uh, Before the character has a name, they keep calling him the effeminate man, and um, later on, the same character like twirls a purse around and just kind of like laughs, and I'm like, this is like awful LGBT representation. This is this is not. I don't know what's happening with this, but for 1969, I don't know that we had awesome LGBT representation necessarily. in films. You know, I just consistently. Uh, so this is a part about going back into time capsules and being like, what the fuck else were we doing in 1969? Um, so again, not great. I also didn't. I reviewed last year. I reviewed Dog Day Afternoon, and I felt the same way. I was like, this is not great LGBT representation. I know this film is regarded as a classic. I'm not in love with this. Um, so yeah, Joe gets put into a situation by Ratso that we also get sort of pervasively through flashbacks. It's sort of like a fever dream sequence. Things happen to him. There's this girl, Annie, that he meets that he likes, and then Annie gets gang raped. It actually uses the term gang raped in the audio description, which I was like, what? We use gang raped in the audio description. Kudos. So, I appreciated the bluntness of just cutting to the chase as to what was happening to her instead of like trying to like describe and just no, it's just being gang raped. All right, cool. Um, and some stuff happens to Joe that he doesn't want to talk about and would rather just shove into the back of his mind. Um, and basically, that's what happens to him. It's a similar thing, although they just I don't know, they don't show it. There's one scene that was described as him being pushed down on his belly with his legs spread, being prepared for an enema. And I'm like, I think we know what's gonna happen here. Obviously there are reasons why this is 1969, guys. This is this is a theatrical release in 1969 that went on to win Best Picture. Uh, even though I'm not crazy about the representation, I literally can't get past the fact of how subversive as fuck this movie is. So, really, just so many films after this. It's like Midnight Cowboy came in like a grenade and blew the door open, and then everybody was like, "Wait a minute, we can do what in our films? Like what can we do and still win Best Picture?" You know, it's a huge bold choice of a film. It has a lot to say about idealism, about being uh having just I don't know, like the difference between being like egotistical about where you stand in society and the reality of where you actually stand and thinking that you you're hot shit when you're really not and you're big fish little fish in a big pond or big fish small pond, whatever that thing is. I can't even think anymore. It's got all of those themes put in here because Joe Buck is thrown into the Big Apple, and I guess whatever worked for him before, it seems to not be working at all here. And Ratso tries to tell him that. He's like, listen, man, your cowboy thing doesn't really work for anybody except, and I'm not going to say it. I could keep using derogatory terms in that community. Um, so yeah, um, it's it's a film. It is a film, and I think it's an important film to watch. I think it's an important film to watch regardless of where we keep going in terms of our progressive nature. Like, we write films off. We do this with things. Like, Gone with the Wind is dead to us. It's like, but there was something there. There was a craft that was in Gone with the Wind that's missing now. There's something about that movie and that book. You don't have to like it, but you should, if you're planning on doing this, what I'm doing, sitting here and talking about film, like I recognize that there are still films that I need to see, and that there are, the thing about it's sort of like becoming like a literature buff, right? And you drop in now, and oh my God, there are a lot of books for you to read, right? like where do I start? Um, so It's like that with film. I mean, there's like a ton of films, and then you watch the ones that are coming out, the new ones, and then the old ones, and then people are like, "Oh, there are international titles for you to watch too that you should get in on." And obviously, my journey was cut a little bit short because now I'm reliant upon audio description for a lot of this. So I don't know. I'm not going to get to a lot of the international films because they don't have audio description. So I'm going to watch as many of these films as I can. And this is the Best Picture winner. So I'm checking this off my list. And I think everybody should check this off their list. I think there's a lot of style here. There's a lot of subversive nature. I think in terms of film history, this place has a place in it. I think the fact that it's falling off of lists is wrong. I think we have to be able to grade a film and say, this is where it is, and it stays here. Not just, well, later on we looked back on it and we go, some films, yes, because they never had a place. I, uh, all the way back, all the way back, we got some films in there, that truly never had a place in society, in the world, and they belong on like another list of, uh, you can watch them for reference. Birth of a Nation. Um, but honestly, if you watch 10 minutes of Birth of a Nation, you've watched Birth of a Nation. So, uh, anyway, so there's stuff here, and there's plot, there's a story. It's I don't. It's not impossibly offensive. It's not to the point where I think Birth of a Nation did something completely different, where like you put people in like blackface and then made black people like the villains and had them like carrying off like white women and raping them and stuff like that. It was just the whole film was just like a Klan recruitment video, disguised as a major motion picture. So terrible. This is not that. And Gone with the Wind is problematic, but shot very well for its time. When you look at it, it's fucking beautiful. It's like 1939. And you're like, God damn, this movie looks great. Um, Midnight Cowboy uh, is, yeah. I don't know. Do we need to be kicking this off of lists? Like Coco is on IMDb's top 250 list. And listen, I like Coco, but if I have to pick a film to be on the top 250 list between Coco and Midnight Cowboy, I'm gonna give it to Midnight Cowboy. Coco doesn't really have like a place in cinematic history. It's just like another Pixar film, and Pixar has several films on the list already. So, it just I'm not. I mean, obviously there are other films too, but Coco. I remember going through the list recently and being like, "Why is Coco on here?" Um, just there's so many other films that aren't. Just so many other films. And you're like, "Well, that's missing. That's missing. That's missing," and they slowly get pulled down. People rate them, and they get slowly pulled down, and they get down to the sevens, and they get pulled out of these lists, and it's like we don't even really notice it. And meanwhile, we get something brand new that comes along and it breaks into the top. Like Dune Part 2 is one of the top 250 films of all time. It's literally been in existence for like 3 months. So, uh, time, time does not have any meaning anymore. It's whatever's cool. Um, Whatever's hot at the time. Come and See has had such a resurgence recently. I think ever since its Criterion launch. I'm way off the topic here. But yeah, I finally saw Midnight Cowboy. And it's not my favorite movie, but I respect the craft. I thought the performances were good. But it could be my favorite Jon Voight performance, although I don't think I've seen his entire body of work, so I don't think that's really fair. Because I can think of other Jon Voight films. I think like I haven't seen Coming Home. So I will maybe a placeholder, put an asterisk, like for now. Um, Dustin Hoffman obviously has a bunch of performances that were great around this time, and this is just I don't know, this is fine. It kind of felt like Dustin Hoffman to me, honestly. But I'm more interested in the direction. I think John Schlesinger's direction is worth watching, and a lot of times we talk about auteurs and we talk about directors and we talk about their style and what is it they brought to the table. And I think this has style for days, and I think the audio description captures that style. It's it feels very indie. This feels like something A24 would release nowadays. Like there's a shot where it like lingers on a neon sign and then the audio description is like and it fades to black. But it doesn't even that's not even like the end of the film. It's just like a transition, you know? And the constant sort of like dream sequences, flashbacks, like all the stuff that's happening, the narrative is not as straightforward as you would think it is. All that stuff I think lends itself to a really strong directorial vision from John Schlesinger. So I think more than anything, that's sort of the reason to watch it. And then also, just aren't you curious as to like what people thought was the best picture in 1969? What was the first X-rated film to win Best Picture? Like all those things. This is also the first film to ever have a black editor nominated. The first black editor nominated for an Academy Award was for Midnight Cowboy in 1969. So it has a lot of historical references to it and a lot of reason why it still matters in cinematic film. It's not a film that I can imagine I would want to watch over and over and over again because it's kind of bleak. But yeah, I'm glad I finally checked this off my box. Uh, I There are plenty of films that I give A's to because they make me feel happy and warm and fuzzy. And then there are films that I give A's to. I'm like, I don't know that I need to see that again. But I thought it was really great. Like The Craft was solid. Um, if this was made today, the LGBT representation in this would horrify me. If this was 2024 release and somebody was making this, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? I mean, I know it's like a time capsule film. Like you're trying to go back to 1969, but there's some stuff here that I feel like we would do a better job of even in that. Um, so trying to hide the fact that people used derogatory slurs in 1969 is insane. It's kind of how I feel about that 90s show. It's like that kid would not have the wonderful experience that he's having on that 90s show in the Midwest in the 90s. Either address it or don't address it. Uh, you know, he's living his best life and he has got a supportive community around him for some reason in the 90s. In 1969, those words would be used. I don't like the I don't like the effeminate man. I don't really like that as the description for him. And I don't like his representation in the film. I feel like he is that is more problematic to me than any of the language that's used in this film. So um he bothered me. It felt like somebody who didn't know what a gay person was and then was like, well, this should be this is my interpretation of it. And then it's just this like really sort of eccentric, cartoonish, um, stereotypical non-representation. It's a nothing. It's a nothing representation. It's a character that feels like it's whatever. It's just, I don't know. Anyway, that's that's the dark spot in the film for me. But again, holy shit, for 1969, I think a lot of films owe a lot of what they put in their films later on in the 70s to the fact that Midnight Cowboy did it first. That Midnight Cowboy did it and then also proved that you could get critical acclaim and actually win Best Picture. Not just get nominated for Best Picture, but actually win Best Picture. So kind of really shot that X rating in the face, Just to close out my review, I thought it was really funny. I was reading on IMDb because I'd go through the IMDb page just to make sure that you know, is there anybody who, like, before they were a star, like Bob Balaban, you know, popped up that I'm missing? And I saw one of the user reviews was like, I don't know that many people know what this film is. I found it really hard to find. I couldn't, you know, I'd heard about this, and it was like, it was this very like obscure, like this person. I think they were being dead serious. I think they were acting like, and that, if that is really sad. So I'm glad I'm doing a review of Midnight Cowboy so that more people can know that it exists, because there was somebody out there who, like, I guess found it hard to find a copy of Midnight Cowboys or something whenever they went for it. And I don't, and they acknowledged the fact that it was on the top 100 list, and they thought it was an obscure title back then. I was like, it's a Best Picture winner. It's not obscure. Best Picture winners are not obscure. Anyway, I'm done. I'm sorry, this is like a train of thought thing, but I like doing it this way. Um, so I'm going to give Midnight Cowboy an A. It deserves it. I don't always agree with everything that's in it, but I can't fault the style, and I can't fault the direction, and I can't fault the acting. And it feels like it's one of those pieces that feels more important than the film because of what it meant for other films, like how it opened up the doors for other films. I'm sure there's like a book on like what Midnight Cowboy did for cinema. Just that film. I'm sure there's a book that's on that explores just how Midnight Cowboy. I feel like I'm positive that some film historian has explored just the effect of Midnight Cowboy on cinema. So yeah, I'm not going to buck the trend, and I think it should be higher than a 7.4 on IMDb. Um. Anyway, uh, that's it. I, I enjoyed the audio description. It's really good, and it really goes for it, and it doesn't hold back, and that's great. It felt like it was, yeah, totally worth watching. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.